the day, entrepreneurship is one of the key elements that can boost the country's economy. Youngsters are lining up now to build these promising startup companies, and with this point of view, an Indonesian entrepreneur who has been globally acclaimed for his management skills and IT knowledge has focused more to gather and support the young generation to compete internationally. Wempi Diokta Koto, he is named by Fortune as one of Indonesia's 40 under 40. With 15 years of international experience, Wempi Diokta Koto has lived in London, San Francisco, and many other cities across the world, applying his skills on advertising, marketing, and business developments. He has been working with renowned global companies like Citigroup, Sony, Microsoft, and many others. Wempi serves as a judge in many entrepreneurship competitions. He was awarded Asia's highest entrepreneurial accolade, the Asia Pacific Entrepreneurship Award, and Wempi was also named as one of the world's 200 leading social CEOs by Strategic Objectives, the United Nations award-winning communications agency. And now Wempi is here with us. Thank you, Wempi, for being here.
Good to see you, Tom.
It's good to see you here. So, can you start with your mission? You start to focusing more in Indonesia since 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Is it
correct?
Correct.
Absolutely.
So, why is that?
So I decided to leave London in 2012 to really focus my energy on the Indonesian market, because I was born in Indonesia in a village called Padang Panjang, but I'd lived my entire life overseas in Europe as well as America and Asia and Australia, and this was my first ever sojourn back to Indonesia.
So is this actually part of your dream goal to move completely to Indonesia perspective now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's less a dream goal, but a responsibility actually, because I was born here. I am a citizen of Indonesia, and so contributing to the country is absolutely part of my life mission.
So since 2012 until now, what have you learned about Indonesia young generations or entrepreneurs?
I've learned that we have a huge thirst for and a huge hunger for education. And I think that that's what's really going to advance our country, our thirst for education. We have a very infant startup scene. Our level of sophistication in that whole sort of technology area is still at its very infant stages. But I believe with education and with a lot of international learnings and success transfers, then we can really advance the country. We're still at baby stages right now.
Baby stages. If now I'm not mistaken, I read in some one of articles here, the key issue with Indonesian startup is the losing of in invention perspective. So how is it now?
Well, okay, there are different stages of invention, right? The first level is importation, and that's where Indonesia is at. We import almost everything,
yes,
from expensive TV cameras to cars to ships to warplanes. We import everything. The next stage is imitation, and that's where China's at, and that's what China does very well.
Copy and paste.
Yeah, copy and paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. China does a great job at imitation. We're not even there yet. And then the next level above that is innovation, and innovation where actually there is a large amount of change and dynamic development, but that is still quite incremental. Now, where I would love Indonesia to be in my lifetime is the stage of invention, where we're inventing like the World Wide Web, or we're inventing the telephone or the internet. So things like that, Indonesia still has a very long way to go, and we are not at that stage yet. We're still, unfortunately, at importation.
But you've been searching for these youngsters to
Yes.
compete globally. So in terms of that, looking at those upcoming, the next generation of our business, business doers or business persons, how do you think so far? Are they actually competitive enough to compete globally?
Okay, so I'm very hopeful because I travel all around the country, from Makassar to Padang to Medan to
Yes.
Jogja, everywhere across the country to teach, to educate, also to judge a lot of the national and international competitions. What makes me hopeful is that Indonesians, when they're told to drop their egos and learn, they will drop their egos and learn, which doesn't necessarily happen at London or Silicon Valley, but they do here. And so just to give you an example, was that I was supposed to judge a competition here in Indonesia called Get in the Ring, but unfortunately I was actually stuck at Amsterdam because I had meetings with some clients that had come from Washington DC. So I was stuck at Amsterdam, but then I contacted the event organizers to say, look, I'm stuck here. I cannot, judge the competition, but I will mentor the winner when I return back to Jakarta. The winner came back to me, and then after that pitched the business, and I told them, look, that's completely scrappy, that's not of a global level, that's not of an international level, you'll never win the competition if I was there. And then I completely recoached them, and they came back and won €1 million. 14 million. Just by listening to, somebody who has a bit more experience than them.
Oh, well, if I learn from the startup companies here in Indonesia, most of them are financed by international companies. So why is it like that? Why Indonesian companies are not brave enough to invest in those startup companies?
Well, foreign companies, they obviously inject a lot more capital there. And also there's actually a fear. I'm part of like an angel network here in Indonesia where we invest in different startups. I think there's just a fear, there's just that lack of education. What is an angel round? What is a Series A, Series B? What is an IPO? So the more the Indonesian investors as well as entrepreneurs are educated about the whole ecosystem and all the processes of growing a startup from zero to multi-billion, then, the greater the investment will be. The reason why a lot of international, per your question, the reason why a lot of international investors are coming here is because they've seen patterns in Silicon Valley, in Europe, etc., and they know that Indonesia is a hot market, right? We've got a population of 250 million people that needs to be domestically served, and so the only way that they can be done is through disruptive startups that are absolutely killing the status quo of big companies and creating new innovations on their own.
Like you mentioned that we are still in the baby stage right now, and the reason why you're here is actually to make it fast. So what is your plan for doing it? So I mean, what kind of target are you aiming at now?
Well, I think it has to be on many levels. I have to work with government at that level, because government has to support and actually foster that ecosystem. And then I also work as a venture capitalist, so I work with the corporate community there to try and foster that ecosystem. But I also have to work at grassroots level and educate the Indonesian public. So that means whether it's television, whether it's radio, whether it's on stage to a few thousand people, or even in small classrooms. I even do small classrooms about 50 or so sort of people, and that education has to happen at different stratospheres, at different levels, and that's what I devote myself to. And the whole mentoring process is vital to Indonesia. And because if I go on stage, it's 1 hour or 1.5 hours of inspiration. But then after that, then what are the solid action steps?
Like what's next?
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's got to be high level and as well as grassroots.
So you mentioned about government support before. So what kind of support, what kind of regulation do you need for that?
Well, I need the government to really actually deregulate rather than regulate.
All right.
Right? Because the government is so, like I work with the OJK, Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, as well as Bank Indonesia, as well as BPPT and all these different agencies. And they are all about regulation, all about where's your financing.
We're stuck in there.
Exactly, exactly. Right. And what Indonesia needs to be is a lot more entrepreneurial. It's less about regulation, but it's all about more about fostering and saying, you know what, these kids, they don't understand what tax is, but they do want to change the world. Right? So let's give them some sort of leniency. Let's give them some, instead of trying to tax them in their first year of trying to make some sort of income, let's actually start to fund them. Let's build some sort of government momentum or corporate momentum that actually starts to foster these kids rather than sort of, they sit in fear saying, I don't know, what do I do? The tax department is after me.
All right. Instead of regulate, it's deregulate.
Deregulate, absolutely, yes.